Hi guys, welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at Byredo's new limited edition eyeshadow palette. It's called Prismic, and as the name implies, it's a very colorful palette. It's meant to encourage experimentation. It doesn't say that it wants you to create looks you wouldn't normally wear out, but it certainly does encourage you to play with colors however you wish. And I did have a lot of fun with it. The look that I have on today is not something I've ever done before. The placement of the colors, the choices of it's all very abstract to me. I feel like this is something I might do if I try to paint or color. So it's been a lot of fun. I'll share all of my thoughts in detail after the demo. To start, let's take a look at the palette. So the palette comes in this nicely, actually pretty light recyclable box here. This is the sleeve and the palette just sits in here. The palette itself has a very reflective, compact, basically it's like a mirror, and this here is actually a sticker that was put on rather than lasered on, so you can actually feel the texture of the sticker. I believe on here is Isamya Ffrench, who is the creator of this palette and the collaborator of Byredo's makeup line. The mirror of the palette, there is a sticker on it, but on the sticker there is the logo Byredo, the B. And the eyeshadow palette, super colorful, fun. There are a good mixture of mattes and metallics. Some metallics have a more glittery finish than others. This one here is a duochrome. Very eye-catching, very pretty. And you can see here I've got some red on the blue and then some blue on the red. I was just playing around with mixing colors when I was doing swatches. The palette's really interesting because when I look at this, it doesn't speak to my intuition for how I do my makeup, how I choose my color pairings. And it was very apparent, and we'll go through the website description, that there is no kind of this gradient placement of colors so that you can create a nice gradient look. You know, gradient looks is basically what I do on this channel all the time. So it's not intuitive to me, but it certainly is a lot of fun. I did swatches this afternoon, and the color payoff, the vibrancy of all the shades is just so mesmerizing. I just couldn't take my eyes off of my arm. We'll be doing swatches here for today's video as well. Hopefully I can fit it onto my arm, but we might have to get creative here. We might have to do one side right here and then flip over to the other side, but we'll see how that goes. A bit about the product description. The palette contains 18 shades, 3 different finishes, matte, metallic, and glittery, spanning a rainbow of shades from grunge to glamour. Each color is seen through distinctively different perspectives: a sparkling copper red, an ethereal shimmering lilac, a soft matte navy. Rather than being neatly arranged in a formulaic gradient, the set is presented as a disrupted series designed to provoke experimentation. In a lightweight and long-lasting texture, the highly buildable shades are designed to inspire instinctive rather than prescriptive application. So I alluded to this before we went into the website description that you are encouraged to experiment. In fact, when I went to pick this up, the product specialist, who was also the store manager, was telling me how Isamya wanted people to be able to use their fingers to do a look. You can use your fingers, a sponge, brush, but you can use whatever you'd like to get these shadows on. And it makes sense that you can use your fingers too, as well as a brush or a sponge. You can use some of these shades to apply on your lips and also your cheeks. I did apply this shade here, and the names are actually printed on the back of the palette. So this shade is Chihuahua, and I do have that right along here. And it was nice and easy to dab this brush into the pan without too much spillover, you know, or taking some of these shades inadvertently. So these are a good size, and a palette like this that's meant for experimentation, it really helps when they're not tiny, and I think the design makes a lot of sense. The palette itself is also lightweight. It looks hefty, it's 18 shades, it looks like it might be hefty, but this is a lightweight kind of plastic material, and I don't mind that. I know that some people may feel that for the price of this palette, how this is a luxury brand, that you would want something more substantial, like a Pat McGrath, you know, that lacquered packaging that she has. But if this is meant for experimentation where, you know, you could be holding this and dabbing and putting that, or whether a brush or with a finger, you'd probably want this to be fairly lightweight so that you can hold on to it for, you know, a lengthy period of time to create your look. When I was also in the store, they did also include some material, some reading material. These beautiful photos here printed on cardstock, but on the back of each one of them talks about how the makeup line came into or became a reality. What was the initial concept? How did Isamya get involved? What was her thoughts on creating a makeup line? So really, really interesting. One of them in particular grabbed my attention, and I think this is worth sharing. On one of the cards, it says, Ben Gorham launches Byredo makeup in collaboration with Isamya Ffrench. So the initial makeup from Byredo launched October 2020, and it was 2 years in the making. I didn't get any of the makeup that was launched October 2020, but I think in my New Year video, like what to expect in the new year in terms of content, in that video I did talk about brands I'd like to try in 2021, and Byredo was one of them. So here we are now with this palette. I'm very pleased that, you know, this came out fairly early in the new year, and we get to try it together. So one of the other cards that I do want to read through is really Isamya's own kind of description, how she feels about makeup, which does give insight into how she came up with this palette. Because this was made available last October with the launch of these makeup items. There's like a lipstick, mascara, eyeliner, and these kind of raindrop-like compacts are actually eyeshadow compacts that have, I think, 5 shades in them. But she does talk about what her whole concept, how she feels about makeup, and I think that does give insight onto, you know, why she came up with this palette. So she says, when I first started talking to Ben, he asked me how my ideal makeup brand would look. I replied, unwearable. So of course we had to compromise. Fundamentally, it is about making things that you would like to own and to wear, and how the communication of it is as important and interesting as a product. With Ben, I share a love of the outdoors, a background in sport, and we both come from outside the fashion and beauty industries. Neither of us wanted makeup that was too conformist or precious. In many ways, we wanted to abstract the idea of what a cosmetic brand would be. As in Byredo's sense, it's about translating an emotional connection, this time through color and visual language. It's about identity and how to make a relationship with a product rather than being told how it should make you feel. It's about color, texture, and your own emotional response to things. I'm not interested in telling people what to do. The idea of telling people how to do something or be something does not make sense to me. I did not want to tell people how to wear the cosmetics, but simply to inspire them. In launching a makeup brand, there's a certain reconceptualizing of what makeup is and what it can say. Byredo can be anything. This is what we're trying to accomplish. So these are the words from Isamya Ffrench herself. And when I think from this perspective and look at this palette, it really makes sense. However you go about creating a look, whether you use your fingers, a brush, or a sponge, or whatever your choice is, and the tool, however you go about it, it's self-expression, it's no judgment, what makes you feel, and how you want to go about communicating that. And interestingly enough, earlier this week, I was talking to a friend, I said, I miss art class in grade school. That 90 minutes or an hour once a week when we were in art class drawing or paint, you know, just doing different things, trying different things, trying different mediums, different textures to work with. It was a lot of fun, and it was unlike anything else. And this is what this palette reminds me of. It's really unlike anything else. It does remind me of stage makeup. I think Crayolan is the one that I keep going back to because I used to have a palette and there were only matte shades, and I think there were either 6 or 8 of them. You could activate them with water to make them more intense, more blendable, you know, whatever you'd like to do. But that was it, just 6 bright matte colors. I've decluttered that palette, but I'm happy to, you know, now I have this. And these shades here, especially the metallics, you can add water to them, which I have done to experiment and create this look today. Yeah, to get more intense payoff. So let's get into some swatches and we'll then get into the demo. At the end, I'll tell you guys about, you know, the rest of my thoughts and how this has worn. I've basically had this on for about 6 hours now. I think what I'm gonna do is swatch all the matte shades first, and then we'll go into the metallics. So we have Clay Court, Matte Red, and you can see this is very easy to blend out. I still have some pigment on my finger, but as I blend out, it's actually quite easy to work with. It doesn't blend away. It actually starts to even out the product. Then we have Dark Frog. Followed by Bruise. And then we have Lager. And then Medusa. And you can build on this shade. So if this is too light of a green, you can go back and add another layer to deepen that shade or make it more intense. As I was swatching, you might have noticed some of the pigment kind of flaking off. The formulation, especially with the mattes, are more powdery than their compacts, the raindrop ones that have 5 shades. This is, from what the product specialist was telling me, is so that it would be easier to pick up the product with your finger if you wish to and to work with it. The thing that I'm just not used to is you don't even have to go into the palette with a lot of pressure. You can actually just dab lightly, and I just picked up more red here, and that's all you need to do. So I have a tendency, because of the way I swatched the other palettes, is to kind of really go in and get a lot of product, but you don't need to do that with this. I'll show you just an example, just really lightly, and you've got a good amount of product to work with. And with just light pressure, when you apply it on your lids, it's not gonna flake out, it's not gonna have that kind of fallout. So while it's powdery, it doesn't get all over the place. You can do a few things to prevent that. Now we're gonna get into the metallic and glittery shades. First we have Venus. And I went in softly, just did kind of like a 2 swipe from each direction. It's a nice golden. Then we have Sophisticat. And this is the kind of red, orangey copper shade. It's a metallic finish. Then we have Flush. Very soft and pretty pink. It's a glitter finish. I'm gonna go back for a second swatch. I think this is maybe a shade where you could use a little bit more product to get that payoff. There it is. And then we have Anime. Soft lilac purple. So as we get into the softer shades that aren't as bright, I think for people who are more drawn to softer and colorful looks, this might start, you know, drumming up some inspiration for you. So the next row of metallics, these 4 shades here are probably my favorite from the palette. We have Dark Web, Convertible, Slow Gin, And chlorine. Chlorine is one of my favorites. And we're gonna go back into a few of these shades here to get a more pigmented swatch, or to build that swatch. This is stunning. And what's interesting to me too is that these shades just right off, just clean swatch off of my finger. You get very little left. And for the bottom row, we're actually going to use this side of my arm. First we have Winter. It's kind of like a champagne-y shade that's more like khaki color, I would say. Some brown undertone to it. And then we have Communion. It's always interesting to see a glittery texture or finish next to a metallic, because the glittery finish is a metallic in itself, but the difference is way more noticeable between that of like a true metallic when it's right on top or right next to each other like this. And then we have Aspartame. It's like a corally pink shade. And then Touchstone. This one is a stunner as well. I did not use it today, but I certainly would like to very soon. And Touchstone is a metallic, and they build really nicely. And they're easy to blend. I just love that payoff. You can go really light, create a nice, soft, colorful look, or you can continue to build on the pigments and get more intense payoff. I'm going to go in now with some water, so we're gonna activate some of these shades. And I won't do it for each one of them. We'll try probably 3 to give you guys a sense of the difference. And the 3 I'm gonna go into is, again, gonna be from the bottom row here, since I have room on this side of the arm to show you the difference. So I'm going to start with Touchstone. This is with water. The opacity. And I went in with about the same amount of pressure. And this is how much product I have left after the swatch. This is Aspartame. And I would say it does appear deeper. Now, I might have had too much water. Let me go back in. Yeah, this is a better swatch. I think I had too much water in the first one. So it is more opaque. Now, Aspartame is a glittery shade, so it looks a little bit deeper than without water, but the finish is about the same. I think the metallics is where the texture, or it becomes very opaque and has that transformation that's really obvious. And then this is Winter. This is a copper shade. Like this, it was like champagne with some brown undertone. No, this is a copper shade. Okay, well that was really fun. I'm gonna do one more. This is Communion, which is the shade here, but now with water. Look at that. Oh, the metallics are stunning with water. You can wet a brush and turn any of the metallics into an eyeliner. I've done that with one of the shades here you'll see in the demo, but this, wow, beautiful. All right, with the swatches done, we did go through 18 shades. It's a lot, so I'm just gonna show them again. We have all the mattes here first, followed by the metallics and glitters. And then on the other side, we have the last row of metallics and glitters. Then we have the version with water added or water activated. And how I added water was basically just sprayed some on my finger. In the demo, you'll see me spraying water onto a tray and then dipping a brush in there that's appropriate to wet. And then I go into the palette with that wet brush. Well, let's head to the demo. I'll see you guys at the end. I'm gonna start with the shade Chlorine, and I'm going to add that right along here with this pencil brush. And I'm gonna wet this brush first and then dip it in so I get a more intense color payoff. I'm gonna take this tray. This is from Makeup by Mario. This is his metals palette that I have here. And the tray is actually, it sits nice in here, but this is really handy, easy to wash after I use it. I'm just gonna spray some water and then dip my brush in. And I'm going to take a smaller brush here and I'm dipping that back into chlorine. I've also wet it because I'm trying to add some strokes here of the shade that's not totally the same size as that initial color that we just added. Then we're going to go in to the shade Aspartame. And with a dry brush, getting some pigment on, and I'm just going to kind of add some of that shade here. Then with a wet brush, I'm going to go into Sophisticat, and we're going to use a pencil brush again here. Then we'll go into the shade Anime. And we're adding that here. And I'm also using a dry brush for Anime. I'm adding the same shade just up here along the brow. Now with the shade Winter, I'm going to go in with my finger and I'm adding that to the center. Then I'm going to go into this yellow shade here with a dry brush and we are adding that to the brow bone. And then using a wet brush, I'm going to dip it into Venus. We're adding that to the inner corners. Taking a closer look, I still don't really like how this red turned out on this side. So I'm going to go back in again with a Q-tip to make some corrections, and we might actually replace it with a different color. Let me just do that off camera and then I'll come back. So I cleaned off most of the red. There's still some remnants there, which I don't mind since this is not like a really uniform look anyways. We're just experimenting and trying different things. What I'll do is go back into this lavender shade here. I like how that looks and I'm just going to add some of that back and fill the space in. Really don't mind that there's like a little bit of red there. I'm going to go in with my pinky back into this shade and again this is called Sophisticat. This is how it looks on the finger, but I'm going to go back in just lightly to dab some red right here. For under the eyes, I'm going to go into the shade Slow Gin, and with a wet brush, I'm going to line this on the lower lash line. Go back into the shade here, and we're going to add some of that along here. For blush, I'm going to go into this shade here. It's called Chihuahua, and it's very pigmented, so we're going to really light-handed just tap it. And now I'm going to go in with a liquid liner. I'm using black today. For lips, I'm going to go with Sisley's Le Futo Rouge, and this is in the shade 22. I think this is supposed to be Rose Paris. This is the finished look. After doing this kind of abstract look, out of the box, not my usual comfort zone, the next time I'm going to do this, I know I was intentional about trying more shades for this video, but I think having less shades for a novice beginner like myself would probably be easier. While I do like how the look turned out, I think I mentioned this earlier too, this is not something I'm going to wear out. I do think though the colors in here are actually wearable, because you can pair 2 to 3 bright shades that again are not uniform, you know, they may not match, they're not matchy-matchy, but you pair it with like a bright lip or a nude lip, it's going to be a look, it's going to be a mood, and I think it would be flattering. The fact that the shades are all easy to work with, great pigmentation, good color payoff, they blend very well, and they look nicer and nicer as you blend. Kind of like the Suku shadows. The Suku shadows just blend really nicely, but this one here has like more intensity in its color. It just makes it easy to work with. And having tried to apply some of the shades with my fingers, I would say that is actually very doable as well, even though I'm not a professional makeup artist. So the Byredo palette, Prismic, as I see it, is much more approachable for the everyday beauty enthusiast like myself. I want to have fun, experiment, I want to be inspired. This is the palette for that. Do you need this palette? I would say you only need it if you want to play with different colors, you want to experiment, you want to be pushed out of your comfort zone to try something that is unlike anything else we've seen released by luxury makeup brands. And there are tutorials available on Byredo's IG, so their Instagram account, and also on Isamya Ffrench's account as well. So if you need inspiration or you just need to take a look at what the professionals are doing with this palette, those are good sources as well, and I will link them, or I'll put their handles below so you can go have a look. And as for how these shadows compare to other brands that I have, like Viseart, Pat McGrath, and Natasha Denona, these are most similar to Viseart because they are more powdery. Natasha Denona shadows tend to be creamier, whether it's metallic or mattes. Some Pat McGrath shadows are, I would say the Pat McGrath shadows are kind of like an in-between. It's not powdery like Viseart, but it's not as creamy as Natasha Denona, but it's still pretty creamy mattes. And with these Byredo shadows, it's just really easy to work with. You know, having gone in with my finger to apply some of the shades, it was just so simple. And when I did the swatches here, you know, these mattes looked, this one here looks so bright in the palette, but depending on how much layer of product you have on, you could really come up with like a soft red look. And that's not, you know, that's not the first thing I think of when I see these bright, bright colors, but you can really get soft, colorful looks out of them. And suddenly this is now like appropriate for the daytime. Like, it's appropriate for any time, daytime, evening. The payoff is there, but it can be downplayed, or you can add intensity, and of course you can add water to the metallics to get a very, very pigmented, opaque look. So I've had this look on for 5 going on 6 hours now, and the brightness of the shadows have not faded. I did prime my eyes like I usually do, and it just has not faded. I fell asleep on the couch for about an hour. The makeup didn't smudge and just all look like how it did after I finished creating this look. So indeed, it is a long-lasting formula as well. I have a couple more things about the palette that I wanted to share with you before we go here. All of the shadows are made in Italy, and this palette has a shelf life of 12 months. The amount of product you get is 30 grams or 1.05 ounces. And some of the pans from my palette is starting to wobble a little bit, and this one actually fell out. So what I recommend is just minimize any kind of flipping. You know, I've done that a few times because I wanted to look at the names of the shades as I'm swatching them. So I just recommend to keep it just sitting like this and gently transfer it from surface to surface. Yeah, a few of them look like they've been raised out of the pan. And for the one that fell out on the back, I can see just the little bit of glue they used to keep that whole, the whole shadow sticking to the palette. But if that becomes loose, then it's gonna start falling out. So something to be aware of here. Hopefully you found all this information helpful. I am liking the palette because it just speaks to my inner child. It speaks to the part of me who is really drawn to colors, especially bright colors. And when you put them all together in a palette like this, I just can't take my eyes off of it. I like that this is very easy to work with, because when you have really bright shadows, different textures, I mean, first of all, it's not uniform like they say. So the last thing you need is for these shadows to not be easy to work with, which is not the case. They're extremely easy to work with. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you in the next one. Let me know below if you're interested in more looks, for me to create more looks using this palette. I'd be happy to do another dedicated video. See you guys soon. Bye.